Hey everybody, how you doing? Bill Colarulo from Grungo Colarulo. I have a special guest tonight, Attorney Lee Perlman. Lee Perlman is a bankruptcy attorney with over 24 years of experience. Probably could never tell from looking at him. He looks a lot younger than that. But he has his own practice, the law office of Lee M. Perlman, with offices throughout Southern New Jersey. Lee, thanks for coming on tonight. We appreciate it.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me. This is a pleasure.
So obviously the coronavirus pandemic is going to have massive effects on people's health and on the healthcare system. But unfortunately, as a result of this as well, there's going to be some financial heartaches as well. So we wanted to bring Lee on to talk a little bit about bankruptcy and some things that the CARES Act that was passed may have changed with regard to the bankruptcy codes. So Lee, a lot of us have heard the term bankruptcy and even, Chapter 7, Chapter 11, Chapter 13. Could you touch on a little bit about what bankruptcy is and what those different chapters are?
Absolutely. I mean, the main difference between the two chapters that are available for consumers, there's a Chapter 7 where creditors are not paid back, and there's a Chapter 13. Typically for a Chapter 7, you have to be under the median income. So in the state of New Jersey, for a household of one, it's around very close to $60,000. If we're talking about a single individual, not a lot of assets, not a lot of equity in your home. Typically people file a Chapter 7 with unsecured debt, doctor and hospital bills, credit cards, personal loans, repossessions, and those creditors are giving you a hard time. You need breathing room, you need a fresh start. So Chapter 7 can often be appropriate when, again, you don't have a lot of assets, you don't have a lot of equity in your home, and you're under a certain threshold. Chapter 13 is a reorganization bankruptcy. That allows you, if you're earning too much money for an individual, we'll use an individual to simplify things. You have too many assets, equity in your house, equity in your car. So the nice thing about a 13 is you have to pay creditors back. You can pay 10% back to 100% back. It's based on two things. It's based on your income and it's based on your assets. But people often confuse Chapter 13 and think immediately when they have to file, it means they're paying all their creditors back. That may not be the case. Sometimes you're just paying back mortgage arrears, you're handling tax debt. But the nice thing about a Chapter 13 and a Chapter 7 is the individual gets a stay. So creditors can't call, write, sue, garnish wages, levy on your bank account, and you can reorganize. And in many cases, you can rebuild your credit, and your credit post-filing typically can improve, as crazy as that might sound, after your bankruptcy is filed. So those are the main differences. A Chapter 11 is for a business, and that's for another day, another discussion.
Gotcha. So for individuals solely, we're looking at Chapter 7s and Chapter 13s.
Correct.
And you just mentioned that it can actually improve your credit. I mean, I know a lot of people out there, they immediately think if they file bankruptcy, that's a death sentence for them with regard to their finances going forward, with regard to their credit and being able to get loans in the future. I mean, what can people expect if they do file bankruptcy? How soon after a bankruptcy can they expect to start being able to take out loans and different things?
So in the context of a Chapter 7, a straightforward consumer 7 where no one's paid back, I like to say a Chapter 7 has a shelf life of 6 months. You engage the firm, we file within a month, 2 or 3 months discharge. So, we have a professional relationship with our clients in a Chapter 7, let's say 6 months. After the case is discharged, typically you'll see your credit increase 6 months to a year, anywhere between 50 and 150 points. Now, you might say that seems counterintuitive, or that doesn't make sense, or Lee, how can that even be right? But if you think about it, most of the time, you're in a position where if you're saddled with debt after the discharge, you go back to zero. So you're in a position again where you're not necessarily have to meet, a debt service on a monthly basis. And usually we work to get people's scores. We shoot to have people's scores up to 720, 6 months to a year post-discharge. And we help with that. A lot of firms, after the case is over, they're done. We like to have clients as clients for life and be able to be a resource. And part of what we do is work to improve their credit post-discharge. Now, in a Chapter 13, it's a little different. You're making a monthly payment to a trustee. That payment needs to be on time every month, because that's your new barometer for credit in a Chapter 13. So if you have a $500 a month payment to a trustee and that's timely every month, they report to TransUnion, Experian, Equifax, and I tell clients, this is your opportunity to chart a new credit course. And if those payments are timely, landlords, future lenders, in terms of refinancing, very helpful if those payments are on time, so that your credit actually, again, improves in the context of a 13.
Wow. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier with regard to mortgage payments and things. I know a lot of people's biggest fear with having some tough financial situations is, are they going to lose their home? You know, how can people make sure that they do not lose their home when they're missing mortgage payments and things of that nature?
Well, right now with the COVID-19 epidemic, people should know the following. It's very important to understand that there's national legislation right now through the CARES Act, which was passed last week, that provides that all foreclosures, initiation of foreclosure process, foreclosure judgments, and most importantly, sheriff sales, the point in time in the foreclosure continuum where you must file a bankruptcy before a sheriff's sale or you lose your home, that's all stayed. And it stayed nationally until May 18th of 2020. So one of the most important things I want people to understand in this conversation, and again, Bill, thanks for having me, is that no foreclosure sales are taking place. Now, that's good and it's bad. It's good because, you know, people don't have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, but you need to be mindful of the fact that that's not that far away. And it's probably important, and I always preach to clients to be proactive. When you receive a foreclosure notice, you want to contact an attorney to talk about options. Options may include a loan modification, where they're going to modify your mortgage so you're not in foreclosure, change your interest rate, reduce principal, take payments and put them on the back end. Oftentimes we can get a principal reduction. Your home is worth $300. Your home is worth $300, but you owe $400. We ask for that. We call that forgive and forget in my office. Last year, we got $2 million of forgive and forget and principal reductions. So that process is called a modification. And you also want to look at the option of a Chapter 13, where if the modification is not possible, you can take your arrears and you can spread them out now. Another change to the bankruptcy code through the CARES Act allows you to extend it to 84 months, 7 years. It used to be 60 months to pay your arrears. So you can now have a more affordable payment plan over 84 months, which is a significant change to the bankruptcy code, allowing for more flexibility and affordability for consumers.
Wow. So you mentioned, so the CARES Act has stopped all foreclosures until May 18th of 2020. It's now allowing the payments to be extended over 84 months. Is there
that's if somebody, you know, does indeed file a bankruptcy. The other thing that people need to know about mortgages specifically is that right now, if you call your lender, they'll give you what's called a forbearance. And it's significant, but you know, I deal with mortgage companies and I sue mortgage companies regularly. So the forbearance really just means that if you're 3 months behind, they're going to not initiate foreclosure. Your credit's not going to be impacted, but in 3 months from now, they're going to say, if your mortgage payments are $2,000, they're going to say, well, we need your $6,000 in 3 months. So that's why sometimes it makes sense to at least explore loan modification or bankruptcy before, because in 90 days, if nothing's changed and you're a W-2 wage earner and you don't have that money set aside, it's not a deferral. Let's talk about the difference between a forbearance and a deferment. Forbearance just means that you don't have to make those payments. A deferment means they're going to forgive them in some way or put them on the back end of the loan. The mortgage companies nationally have not agreed to do that.
Wow. So a lot of interesting stuff here. So other than the CARES Act taking off the foreclosures off the table until May 18th and extending some things if you filed bankruptcy with regard to mortgages, were there any other changes implemented from the CARES Act?
That's a great question. And the act is so new, we lawyers are really digging it. But yes, the CARES, student loans, significant change with the CARES Act provides for automatic suspensions presently, as of last week when the CARES Act was effective, March 27th, the suspension of student loan payments until September 30th without any additional penalty and without any impact to the student or borrower's credit report. And the other thing that's important is that the money that you receive from the stimulus under the CARES Act is not counted for purposes of bankruptcy income, which is very significant. And also, it's important to know that creditors can't disturb or interrupt those stimulus checks. That would likely be a violation of federal law, the Fair Debt and Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA. So two things as it relates to that money. That money is not counted for purposes of bankruptcy, and two, creditors can't disturb or interrupt those stimulus checks.
And does that apply to people who even already filed for bankruptcy in the past?
It does. It does. So, you raise an important point too about filing bankruptcy. As we know, this COVID-19 pandemic is impacting everybody, and certain people might out there be thinking, well, what if I already filed? Can I file bankruptcy again? So it's a very straightforward analysis. For a Chapter 7, it's once every 8 years from the date of filing. And for a Chapter 13, it's a shorter time frame, closer to 4 years in most cases. So it's important to know that you have the ability to either refile a Chapter 7 or in some cases reorganize under a Chapter 13 with more flexibility, even if you filed before.
So, I mean, what I'm taking from all this, Lee, because there's obviously a lot of little nuances to the laws and how the bankruptcies work and all that, is if someone's having some financial difficulties, it makes sense to consult with somebody who has experience like you do to be able to get some questions answered to figure out the best course of action. It may not be filing bankruptcy, but it's nice to talk to somebody to figure out what your options are going forward.
I mean, I agree. Coming to me doesn't mean we're filing. We may be talking about a financial restructuring, a non-bankruptcy solution such as a loan modification, or potentially a workout with a creditor. Bankruptcy isn't always appropriate, just like it's not always appropriate for a doctor to have surgery. Sometimes it's physical therapy. But we really try and look at all the different options before we steer someone towards a bankruptcy. And sometimes bankruptcy makes sense if people have waited too long in terms of a foreclosure or a wage garnishment. Sometimes there's not an alternative, but it's important to get good advice and understand what your rights are.
Well, Lee, thank you. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you making some time to come on and providing our viewers with some insight with regard to their financial futures. Hopefully this passes soon and a lot of people get out of this without having any issues, both health and financially, but I do appreciate the information.
I appreciate you bringing me on as a guest. Stay healthy and well, and thanks for including me.
Same to you, Lee. Talk soon, buddy.